This is the Barry Richards Show. WBSM On Demand.
Without further ado,
Broadcasting live from the WBSM studios and streaming worldwide on the WBSM app. This is the Barry Richards Show. All viewpoints are welcome. Exercise your freedom of speech by calling 508-996-0500. Read Barry's latest articles at WBSM.com and on the WBSM app. Now, New Bedford's talk radio king, Barry Richards.
Hour 3 of the Barry Richards Show. Brian sitting in today for Barry. He's recharging the battery. He'll be back in the driver's seat tomorrow. I guess he's driving one of those Teslas so he can recharge and get himself back here. The quote of the day: the world is not driven by greed. It's driven by envy. The world is not driven by greed. It's driven by envy. That's from Charlie Munger. Just happened to hear that the other day, and I said, wow. Wow, Charlie. That's hitting home. And then what Munger did, he started piecing things together the way that you and I know how things have truly happened. For instance, if you look over the past 2 centuries, take it back to 1823, 1824, and just go 1 century at a time, look at the number of inventions that took place during that time, including plumbing, the first airplanes, the first automobiles, the different things that came out during those days, the fact that the Civil War came and left and slavery was over here in the United States. Just a few of the things that happened during that particular time. Then you go from 1924 to 2023. And look how many more inventions and things, I'm just going to say it like that, and things that have been developed over that period of time. We truly, whether you're talking just the United States or the world in general, there has been such fabulous progress. You know, for some of us, we can remember not only that there was no affirmative action, but even women. I had some girls that I went to elementary school with and middle school with that really wished that they were boys because the opportunities weren't there for them at that particular time. That changed in the late, early part of the mid-1970s and has blossomed. Now, does that mean that there isn't inequality or total equity? No, but things certainly have improved. As far as race relations, things have dramatically improved from slavery through Jim Crow to where we are today. Does that mean that everything is equal? It certainly does not. But what I'm getting at and what Charlie Munger was stating is we have progressed so much over the past couple of centuries. And then if you break it down over over the past 60, 70 years, look what has changed from the Depression, where folks were starving. Folks were starving. If you lived in a city, it was very difficult to live because there was no government. I mean, there was government, but government wasn't interjecting, saying that you couldn't be evicted because you couldn't pay the rent. There was no government to interject in case you couldn't pay your mortgage. Fast forward to the 2020s, and not only did we have government stopping foreclosure proceedings, rental moratoriums we had during the crisis called pandemic, people getting stimulus checks. And what they did with those stimulus checks is they did a lot of things, but a couple of things that they definitely did was pay down their credit card debt. Why do I bring that up at this particular time? Because as of this week, credit card debt in the United States is over $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Can you piece that together? That credit card debt in this country could possibly get that high. Well, it has. Because people are using their credit cards more and more right now, whereas during the early part of 2020, people stopped using them because we were going through the crisis called pandemic. And people weren't using that credit card to buy airplane tickets and to go on a Club Med vacation or wherever folks were going on vacation because folks were afraid to go on vacation. Business travel came to a complete standstill. Nobody was flying from Providence to Allentown, Pennsylvania. No, that wasn't going on. In fact, the sports teams, they weren't going anywhere, so people weren't buying sports tickets. You weren't going to Boston Garden. You weren't, at the beginning, you weren't going to Fenway Park. You weren't going, the Bruins play at the same place, but you weren't going to a P-Bruins game. Because folks didn't want to do anything, and those leagues, they stopped doing their sporting event because of the crisis called pandemic. Subsequently, governments were handing out stimulus checks, $400, $1,600. What was the other one? $1,200. And so people spent that money. And how did they spend it? Well, a lot of people took care of whatever credit card debt they had because they knew somewhere over the horizon that debt would still be there, that debt would still continue to climb month after month. So during that period, which was also the Trump period where credit card debt was escalating, it came to a almost standstill. And then, of course, the stimulus money helped to pay it down. Plus, you had people that were getting unemployment checks, and they weren't doing anything. They couldn't do anything. And so they also used some of that money to pay off their debt. Smart move on their part, but that's government intervention at its best, or as some might say, at its worst. And so I asked early on in the show, and I'm going to ask you again, where would we be as a nation? Where would we be today if you didn't get the stimulus checks? If you didn't get extended unemployment? If there wasn't loan, mortgage, and rent forgiveness? If there weren't the PPP loans? Because some businesses were able to stay afloat because of those PPP loans. Now we've got the ERTC money that businesses are getting back, those that were able to stay open but had some kind of malady thrown in there. Where will we be? You know, as I like to say, it's easy to blame Joe Biden. That's the administration that's in power right now. And quite frankly, a lot of things have not gone right under the Biden administration. And Joe Biden is not anybody or a person that I would ever vote for. However, as I mentioned earlier, the credit card debt was rising during the Trump administration. And the crisis called pandemic is what slowed it down. And for the various reasons earlier mentioned. But it was also during the Trump administration that 2 of the stimulus checks were handed out. It's not trying to throw a blame down, not trying to escape blame. What I'm asking is, where do you think this country would be? Because if those PPP loans didn't happen, how many more businesses would have closed down? If folks didn't get the stimulus checks, what kind of credit card debt are we talking about right now? And the same with the extended unemployment. Now, these are things that I'm against. If you were to give me a vote in Congress or in the House of Representatives, the state House of Representatives, I would have voted keenly against it. If I was governor, if I was president, I would have vetoed. If I were president, I probably wouldn't have grinded the country to almost a standstill. But that's what happened, and these checks went out. Where the heck will we be? One of the questions I'm asking, and I'm curious as to your thought process on that, so let's hear from you at 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hey, Brad.
Hello.
How you doing?
I am. How are you?
Very fantastic.
Great.
So, in regards to the credit card debt, now we have to take into consideration a few things. One,
can I get you to talk into the phone because I'm getting that wavy, you're underwater sound?
Oh, yeah. You got me?
Much better. Thank you.
Sure. So, what I was saying was the credit card debt, I think some of it has to do with inflation. Obviously, you had like 8%, 9% inflation on your expenses, which is going to obviously turn into credit card debt.
Okay.
You'd agree with that?
Well, you know what? Certainly, and here's why. Because from last week to this week, with that week ending July 26th, during that 1 week period, credit card debt went up $2 billion.
Right.
So I think inflation did have something to do with it.
So my whole thing is, I'm not going to sound an alarm in regards to credit card debt because people could be paying it. A lot of people actually use it every day, and they have to have cash because they get cash back. They actually get points. So you go out and get a coffee, and you spend $5 on a coffee. You're actually getting that cash back. You spend it. You're spending that money, and you're getting cash back. So people are actually using it to accumulate points, not specifically because they're short on cash. The other thing, I would.
Well, they may not be short on cash, but here's the thing: they're not paying their debt, so they must be short on cash. It's credit card debt.
Right, it's credit card debt, but what about delinquencies? So credit card debt is month to month. That doesn't matter to me. But is it delinquencies? Are they paying it at the end of the month? So could they go into debt, but are they paying the debt at the end of the month? If delinquencies spike, that's when you start to raise a red flag going, something's wrong in the economy. You know, if that correlates with obviously job loss and you see an increase in job losses. If you see the red flag delinquencies, credit card delinquencies, yes, then that's a red flag the economy is weak. But if it's just credit card debt, like I said, there's an incentive to actually use your credit card now. You're using your credit card to accumulate points where now, you know, next month you don't even have to pay anything because you have $100 in cash back.
Yeah,
so
I hear that. I don't know that I do buy it because I understand that people use the cards for cash back. But the problem with that is if you've got credit card debt, that's money that is owed. And when it gets over $1 trillion, that is a huge, huge problem. I do appreciate the call. Let's continue. Hello.
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 I'm back. We were talking rent control. If they were to put rent control on the ballot, I'm talking about in the state of Massachusetts, it would pass in flying colors.
Why do you say that? It didn't pass before. Why do you think it would pass now?
I'm not. I just hear people say they're sick of paying ridiculous amounts of money for rent, and they should come out with a cap or bring back rent control. The problem is people are not going and voting. They're sitting at home and crying and complaining about it, particularly in New Bedford. And I do notice a lot of people moving out of here.
Yes.
So I think if it was to go on the state ballot, it would pass in flying colors.
Well, you know what? I don't know. And I would certainly, as I was 30 years ago, I would be out there as a champion to make sure that it doesn't pass.
Well, the landlords would like you for saying that.
Well, I'm a former landlord, so yeah, I'm sure they would. But the fact of the matter is, it's not, it might solve a little problem. How does that help the landlord by having rent control?
It doesn't.
Okay, so it might help one side of the coin. I'm going to use a different analogy. I hope you see my point here. So in the early 1970s, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that Roe championed Wade, and all of a sudden, the right to an abortion in all 50 states happened. And for 49 years, there was a blowback from the people who didn't believe in abortion. Last year, as you very well know, the Supreme Court came out and they struck down Roe, basically leaving it as a states' rights issue. Don't you think somewhere down the road when the Supreme Court changes and becomes, as they would say, more, I'm going to say it's really more conservative as opposed to more liberal, that they will then try to reenact, and when they get the opportunity, reenact woke. So do you see you can't really resolve a lot of human issues through legislation because there's always the yin and the yang.
Yeah, you're right. And I got one more question for you.
Quickly, please.
Which clown are you going to vote for, Trump or Biden?
Neither.
Same here, man.
Neither. I didn't vote for either in 2020. I didn't vote for Trump or Clinton in 2016. In fact, I've pretty much voted for a libertarian presidential candidate since the 1990s, except for I did vote for Governor Weld, but I want to add to that. Governor Weld was a different breed. He had a lot of libertarian stripe in him. So I did vote for him because I didn't want John Silber, but I did like Weld, and there was no libertarian running in that particular gubernatorial race. Hey, got to let you go, but I do appreciate your call. You too. 508-996-0500 is how you get on the Barry Richards Show. Welcome back. What a day. Skylar Spindler over at ABC6, she was giving the weather forecast. We're going to see some rain, scattered showers. I guess they scattered away because it doesn't seem to be raining outside right now. All right, let's go back to your calls at 508-996-0500. Hello.
How you doing?
I am fantabulous.
Awesome.
And yourself?
Hey, I'm okay. Hey,
I'm okay. There's a song,
Rhode Island, huh?
Huh?
Your son's moving to Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Good for him. It's a little bit less oppressive here in Rhode Island, but it's steadily growing. So,
well, I think he believes that he can get rent for a lot less than he's paying here in the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth. Hey, this is what we were talking about something the other day, Brian. It's like bring it back up real quick. This is the point I was trying to make, is if we study false history, we're going to get fooled again. And I think that part of our history where people in this country were killing each other based on a lot of deception, that story hasn't really been told truthfully. And hiding all these monuments and taking down all these flags is just going to reinforce the lie and negate open discussion on what we really need to have. Because I don't believe that part, 1861, 65, and the Reconstruction, which is probably even worse, is taught truthfully. There's so much deception, secret society manipulation. You know that Russia stationed 2 fleets on the east and west coast because other foreign nations were going to get involved? Was never taught that in high school or college, and it took 2 civil wars.
Well, what does that have to do with the Confederate flag?
The Confederate flag. Well, which one are you talking about? Because the one that you were talking about at the beginning. I mean, why do we bring Russia into that? Because in order to understand everything about that war, you need to know all the facts. Slavery did not just exist in the southern United States. It's a tragedy. I don't want to bring back slavery, but it didn't exist only in the southern United States. It was a global tragedy. And there was a lot of, like I said, deception. The majority of people down south didn't own slaves. And the people that fought in that war were drafted. And the South showed a lot of concessions.
Wait a minute. The people that fought in what war were drafted?
In the war between the states. The Confederacy conscripted people. It wasn't all about slavery, Brian.
So the Confederacy, I don't remember the Confederacy conscripting. In fact, I remember the Confederacy. They had the volunteers. It was the North. It was the North.
There was a Confederate draft too.
Well, where did the Confederacy get their money in order to do conscription?
Financed by dirty bankers. That's why the Russians sent those fleets over here, because it was a dirty banker war to try to break up the United States, and they sent their Rothschild's little agents here. And you know that the South wanted to buy European goods from Europe, but they were denied by the Northerners who put a lot of tariffs on there. And it was like 2 different countries back in the day, Ryan. We got to.
It was individual There were individual states, as we were supposed to be.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they really had a right to secede if they wanted to.
They absolutely did.
Because it wasn't.
I've never argued that.
People call them traitors, but they didn't try to overtake Washington. They just said, "Hey,
no, they wanted to be themselves." Right now. No, I totally agree. And the war was not about slavery. The war was about their sovereignty.
And I want to make this clear to you that we could debate this, you and I, this whole topic, the whole 3 hours, if you were here tomorrow. That's how much I'm trying to get this point across. And don't try to make me anybody out there that I'm some kind of racist and I want to enslave people. I'm just saying that things are a lot more complex when you get fed a certain thing and forced to feel that certain thing and allow not a truthful debate. I think we're headed for another one of those tragic moments. And this time, the whole place falls down.
The whole place?
Yeah, the whole place. There's going to be more manipulations.
Well, I don't think you're going to have states separating. I think you might have a portion of the country that doesn't want to be with the majority, but that would be a little bit different than the entire South, including Texas. Hey, okay, thanks for the call.
All right, later.
I do appreciate it. It's something that I brought up earlier. I want to get back to this quickly. And it deals with a couple of bills. I say there are a couple of bills. It's really one bill. One is in the House and one is in the state Senate. That would expand as well as increase the bottle bill here in the Commonwealth, or as somebody said, the communist wealth. Bill was filed by State Rep Marjorie Decker and Senator Cynthia Cream. Their numbers, if you want to look them up, H3690. The Senate bill is S2104. They would expand the types of bottles that would have a deposit. They would include the plastic water bottles, the iced tea containers, and of course, the infamous nip alcohol bottles. Isn't that interesting? Now, wasn't there an attempt not too long ago, and it didn't go anywhere? You see what happens? You get a few states, a few cities and towns going down this road. Wareham, New Bedford, Fairhaven, Mashpee, Revere. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, the whole state needs to do this. Is there litter? Yes. Are these bottles causing the majority of it? I think we have a lot of question marks about that. Again, why don't we slap some type of tariff, refundable tariff on paper plates? Because I see those little flying saucers going all over the place. Why don't we do the same thing for plastic cups? You know, the not necessarily the real small plastic cups that you might see at a water cooler, but the larger cups that you see in Cumberland Farms, or the coffee cups that you see over at Honeydew and Cumbies. Why don't we start slapping a 5 cent or 10, because these bills would also increase the tariff, returnable tariff, to 10 cents. So now they're jacking it up, as if jacking it up is going to make a bigger difference. And what happens to that money? Don't you wonder? So the liquor stores and the grocery stores, they charge you that 5 cents per can per bottle. What happens to that money if somebody doesn't return said can or bottle? I mean, if it's returned, whether it's returned at the proper store or not, when I say proper store, the store that it was originally bought in or not, the person is getting 5 cents back. I think there's some kind of balancing act through all of that. Maybe not to the particular store, but it begs the question, what happens if the money or the bottle or can is not redeemed? What happens at that particular time? Does the store owner then have to make each 5 cents available to the government? Who gets the money eventually? Who gets that unclaimed money? Maybe somebody knows. I know I don't. Let's hear from you. Hello. Yes. Let's try it again. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
You know, I think that's the epitome of getting nickeled and dimed to death.
Yeah.
You know, these politicians, they have been put in office to do what's right for we, the people. And all they do is look for ways to burden us with more and more taxes, taking more of our money so they can spend more of our money. And I love when they talk about all these programs they put into place. They act like this money is just money that fell out of the sky. People need to wake up and realize that all this money they're spending for all these programs is the taxpayers' money. I just heard today that the federal government has given the New Bedford Housing Authority some money to buy 3 buildings on Union Street to renovate them so they can house the illegals. And I find it just astonishing that the federal government has such an, that it's so easy for them to find funding when it comes to illegal aliens, but yet when it comes to funding to build new senior housing or housing for veterans, they don't have the money. So, we the people, at some point, we need to rise up and say enough is enough. And this bottle bill is bullcrap, because this bottle bill is, they know that most people, because they're lazy, are not going to refund the bottle. So that's more money in their coffers. And you're right, where does this money go? My other question is, where does the money from the lottery go? No one knows where all this money, millions of dollars that's generated from the Massachusetts lottery, what is it being spent on? Where is it going? Nobody asked that question, and nobody knows.
Well, I know it's supposed to go toward education. The part that government gets to keep.
Do you realize what a boondoggle education is? People need to start attending their city meetings and their town meetings and seeing where their taxes go. The town that I live in, 56% of the money, taxes, goes to education. And sadly, it all goes to education, but yet when you talk to some of these children who are graduating from high school, they can't count change, they can't spell, they can't read cursive, they can't even look you in the eyes and talk. So what are they being taught in school?
I bet you they know how to put a condom on a cucumber.
They probably do, and they probably know how to not tell their parents if they want to have gender reassignment surgery. They probably know how to not tell their parents that they got vaccinated because they're having sex with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that walks by, and that's perfectly fine. But, we are living in the most craziest times, and many of us who are older just shake our head. But I'm telling you, it's getting to the point where these people keep pushing and pushing the envelope, and it's time for us to put a wall up and say, stop. We're not going to take it anymore. We've had enough. No more. And I think that time has come. So people need to start.
Look, I think that time came 30 years ago, and I'm wondering, what are people missing? The folks that are producing children today, they are kids that graduated high school sometime in the early to late 2000s. They have experienced this type of school. So I have to say, they're oblivious. They don't know any better. But, the yous and me's, the folks that produce those kids, we do know better. Why aren't we teaching our kids to yank their kids out of the school? Until we move with our feet, there is not going to be the kind of change that you and I are discussing today.
We can't all move to Florida. That's impossible. I mean, this is the third most expensive state to live in, and good luck if your son thinks Rhode Island's any less expensive, because it isn't. Rhode Island is as bad as Massachusetts is. There's a lot of taxes, and they have all kinds of crazy things like their TDI, and the living in Rhode Island is very expensive too. It's expensive everywhere. But this state is a state of giveaways. All they do is give stuff away. I went to the feast on Sunday, and I was horrified to see the amount of people that were covered in tattoos. And I'm thinking, where are these people getting all this money to get all these tattoos from?
Thank you.
I mean, are they putting it on their credit card? Are they getting welfare, and then they take their extra cash to pay for all these tattoos?
You ever talk to I asked that question to a couple of people, and they, it really doesn't cost that much. And then you find out it's costing $200, $300. I can find a lot better way to spend $200, $300 than to get inked up. Thank you much for your call and some great comments. 508-996-0500. Oops, sorry about that. Barry is out today, but he will be back mañana. Let's continue. Hello.
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 What I find aggravating about returning bottles is you put in the machine that says this store or this machine is not authorized to take this particular item. Now, it's Massachusetts tax. I get so frustrated, and I know a lot of people do, because you see all the bottles lined up on the window or thrown into the garbage because they're not going to go anywhere else. And I don't know where to go. It's like I got it at that store. Sometimes I go in the store, and I show her, and she gives me the money from the register at the convenience desk. I'm not doing that for 5 cents. But it's so frustrating that the machines won't take it all, but Massachusetts has their finger in every register looking for your nickel, but they won't give it back because it's not authorized.
It's a scam.
It is, and it's so frustrating because I'm going to try to think of what can I buy that's in glass. I forget this. Oh no, glass is all.
Glass is all. Yeah, that's part of the bottle.
I'll drink from the faucet, and that's it.
Well, I don't know. As the caller prior to the break, alluded to, these lawmakers are just going to keep on. So you go to another bottle, they'll figure out a way to slap that deposit onto it. And now it's going up to 10 cents, or that's what they would like to do.
Now, does Rhode Island have a deposit? They didn't before. You could buy your soda there and not pay the nickel, but you couldn't refund it.
Well, what, how could you get a refund if you didn't pay anything down?
Well, you bring it to Massachusetts and you try it in the machine.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It doesn't work. But the thing is, you're satisfied because you didn't have to pay that nickel to begin with.
Right.
I'm not too sure if they still do that.
Don't know, but I know that there's several states that have a deposit now. So, Grin and bear it, try to find a different type of container until that container ends up getting some type of tax. Why don't we just tax all containers?
Okay, and I'll cut lemons and make my own lemonade and my own orange juice and forget all the cans and everything. I'm so frustrated.
You'll really be frustrated when you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden you're parched and you want to get something to drink.
Oh, well.
They got you. They got you.
I'll drink before I get in the car.
There you go. Well, then you're going to have to go to the bathroom. How would you like to drive down the highway, have to use the bathroom, and got to put a dime back into the door so you can use the stall?
Well, I have to rush home many times, but I try to be prepared wherever I go. I went already.
Well, you know what they say. Mm-hmm. They've got those Depends.
Okie dokie.
Thanks much.
Bye-bye.
I do appreciate your call. Let us continue. Hello.
Hi, is that me?
That's you.
Two issues I'd like to just mention. One, on the bottle bill, the government always tries to improve something, but the people that pay the most are the people that have the least amount of money. They're concerned about having the bottles returned, but they don't care about the people who have to pay the extra nickel to buy the product. And the other thing that they're not taking into consideration is all this stuff really should be on education. There's a lot of people now in towns that have recycling. They're not aware, the city and everybody's not aware of that they're turning the bottles in for the nickel, but they're throwing the cans in their recycle because they don't really, they look at the price as what it is. So there's no accountability for that. That's my take.
So
the other thing.
So wait a minute. Well, I'll let you get to the other one. So folks are using those recycle bins that they have to throw their light beer and their Coca-Cola cans and or bottles into that. And then the recycle people come and they take them and they either get broken up in the recycle truck or they end up in the landfill pit.
No, the recycle is not supposed to be landfill. That's supposed to be recycled.
Well, you're correct. My term.
And the same thing when you turn in the bottles, what do they do with them? They send them to a recycle facility.
Do they get the nickel?
The idea, no, when you turn in, when you go to someplace to get your money back, they take those bottles like in the supermarket, they grind them up and they send them to a recycle facility. So from that point of view, we're still keeping them out of the environment, is my point.
So in other words, when the recycle truck comes to pick up and they pick up those bottles, they go to wherever the recycle truck goes. Are you trying to tell me that the company at where the recycle truck went doesn't take those bottles and get the nickels?
I don't think so. They have no way of separating them. That's my opinion. I'm not sure. I might stand corrected.
Yeah, I would wonder why they wouldn't. I would think, again, it's money for the company.
Well, at any rate, it's keeping it off the street.
Oh, that part I get and I understand. But I mean, a nickel's a nickel. When you start getting 1,000 nickels, all of a sudden you got some money.
Yeah, well, of course, there's two issues here, and I guess I'll have to look into the other one. Your point is well taken. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is rent control. People, a while back, somebody called up about rent control. Rent control is only a good idea if they find a way to control the expenses for the landlord. Control the taxes, control the electricity, control the garbage pickup, and then control the paint you have to pay for, and then you got socialism. Otherwise, it's just a one-sided street. Just control the rent.
You got it.
Hey,
only because of time, I got to fly, but thank you.